welcome to another episode of Working the Web to Win. You know, today being April Fool's Day, expect us to start the program with some online hijinks, but I think we'll save that for a little later in the show. In fact, today's topic is deadly serious since we're going to be talking about the downward slide of the newspaper industry. In fact, today we have two guests that work for local print venues. We have with us Colleen Jones from the Jacksonville Business Journal, and we also have on our screen over here Kurt Caywood from the Florida Times-Union. Thank you both for joining us today.
Very welcome, Carl.
During the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about how the newspaper industry has been trying to reinvent itself for the 21st century, as well as what's in store for those who don't evolve.
Yeah.
All right, but before we do that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Hector so he can introduce the show sponsors and give all our listeners out there the call-in numbers. So take it away, Hector.
So for our guests out there in cyber world, the call-in number is 213-943-3808. That's 213-943-3808. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, and now YouTube. I wanted to say something real quick because we hit a new milestone recently. The blog has now had 40,000 views since inception, which is about a year and 3 quarters or something like that. And the radio station is about 130,000 downloads, which is some big numbers. So, you know, when we think about the dinosaur, you know, what happened to the dinosaurs?
Well, a lot of people think they went extinct, but really what they did was
evolve.
They changed into birds, right?
Right, they turned into something else. And the reality is what's happening to newspapers, like all medias, they're evolving. They're becoming hybrid products. And the more they become hybrid products, the more they'll become successful. And a lot of the downward slide that people have been talking about for the last, since 2009, 5 years, has pretty much started to stabilize. And we're seeing things slowly starting to turn around.
Well, because basically they have two choices, you know,
right.
Either evolve or
become dead chickens
right.
or something, right?
And I know, for instance, Colleen, that you folks have been doing a lot of work on the digital side of the equation over at the Jacksonville Business Journal.
That's right. Yeah, we consider ourselves really a digital-first newspaper, which basically means that we don't hold anything. We like to get whatever is happening in real time right up there on the web, and in some cases that means just a short blip of a story, a quick hit, just to let people know what's going on, be it a court ruling or a business breaking deal, and then we'll do what's called a story ladder, which is to add information as it comes in later. But at least we've got that up there immediately.
So what you're doing is you're breaking the news online, and then this is kind of a recap.
It's what we call the sit-up is when you sit up at your computer to type away and see what's going on, and then the lean back is this guy, because you've got time on your Sunday to lean back with your cup of coffee and sort of digest with more time and a little more in-depth analysis some of the week's events.
Okay. And Kurt, how has the internet changed the way in which you folks do business over at the Times-Union?
Let's see, what should I say, 100% or 180 degrees? It's changed us fundamentally, and as she was saying, we do our first work in digital across platforms, so that we're going to be on Twitter first probably, then we're going to be developing on Jacksonville.com and then FloridaTimesUnion.com, growing the story. I like to call it growing the story transparently, so as we're learning things and as we're adding them, the audience is seeing it.
That's right.
And oftentimes chipping into that report. So, the level of engagement that we're able to achieve now is much more than the kind of gatekeeper role that we used to have, in that we were the ones that had the information, we decided what was important, and we gave it to you. It's a much more two-way street now, and, digital first is our mantra, but also mobile first, and the fact that we want people to get the information that they want, where they want it, when they want it. It's not about whether it's print or digital. It's about being available to them, whatever screen they happen to be looking at or holding or whatever it would be. So it certainly has revolutionized our business and changed the way that we do it. And while it's created challenges, it's created a ton of opportunities. And it's
so how do newspapers become more interactive? Because that's the one thing that you can do online that's really hard to do, on one of these.
Well, I can pick that up first, Kurt.
Sure.
I think there are a number of ways, like Kurt was mentioning, having this two-way conversation with readers. There being, an availability to comment on stories as they're progressing. And sometimes we even get information from that, which is very helpful. We also get that instant feedback about how a story may be playing in the community. We do surveys once a week. We like to take the pulse of our community. I think a week or two was something having to do with the mayor's race. And we're also on social. We're also, as Kurt mentioned, on Twitter. We're out there on Facebook, and that's another way to have that sort of interface with our readers.
And I also noticed that both the Times Union and also the Business Journal have not only advertising on the newspaper, but they also have interactive advertising on the website as well.
Sure.
And speaking of which, Hector, you want to talk about our sponsors?
Yeah, our best sponsors ever is MedMaster and Tub King. And first I want to talk about MedMasters real quick. They're the first social network community that's specifically for the medical industry. And there you can find jobs, you can connect with other people, and you can do social networking that's specific just for the medical industry. Tub King, of course, produces the most beautiful clawfoot tubs that you can buy. And they're the real deal, the cast iron tubs, not these fake acrylic ones that you see here that they break real easily. And they also sell the walk-in tubs that can cure what ails you. So,
okay.
What ails you?
Whatever ails you.
Some sales pitch.
It's like an in-house spa. Anyway, one of the articles that I picked up from BusinessInsider.com, it was called "The Year the Newspaper Died," which actually was 2009. In 2009, more than 100 newspapers closed their doors for keeps. Why didn't newspapers like the Florida Times Union and the Jacksonville Business Journal, how did you get through the tough times when they were making all the changes?
I don't know how long Kurt has been at the Florida Times Union. I'm relatively new to the Jacksonville community and the media here, so I don't know if you want to pick that up if you've been at the Times Union any longer, just have seen that transition.
Yeah, I've actually been at the Times Union for nearly 2 years. It'd be 2 years in May. But before that, I was in management with Morse Publishing Group, which owns the Times Union. And I can tell you that it was a sea change in our business. Advertising revenue did drop significantly, and we had to adjust our business model to fit that. It wasn't always an easy adjustment, and it's something that we've certainly learned to make the most of, and we've had to adapt, and we had to do some things as an emergency and then learn how to live with them, and we have, and we've actually learned how to rise above it. And it's, there was a time, and I'm a 25-year plus veteran of the newspaper industry. I grew up around it. My mother was one of the first female sports writers that ever was, so I grew up in the newspaper industry. There was a time when I was concerned about what we were going to do. I'm not concerned anymore. I know that we understand how to run our businesses in this time. You mentioned newspapers closing down back in 2009, and that's certainly so. But if you look at those, the majority of those were in multiple newspaper markets, and the Times Union and all of the papers owned by our company are one newspaper communities, and there was a much higher, probably, almost 100% survival rate of those that were the mainstay newspapers of their community.
Yeah.
Right, but a lot of things also changed hands.
Right.
And the Boston Globe changed hands. There was a lot. It was almost like baseball trading cards for a while there with billionaires swapping these things back and forth, and some of them regretting the fact that they had bought in just before the bubble burst.
Well, one of the articles that I read is called "The New Adventures," and it's really positive about the newsprint industry in general. And one of the things that they said was positive, above and beyond the destabilization that's happened, is that billionaires are buying newspapers like they're going out of style. Warren Buffett bought like 10 or something.
Right.
So they're out there aggregating these things. And if these guys believe that they're worth something, they wouldn't buy them to throw their money away.
No.
They're using it to buy their assets, and it's a long-term investment.
But what has changed over the last 5 years? That's what's made the big difference, because like I said, in 2009, they couldn't get rid of these things fast enough, and now they're, like you said, they're buying them up.
Well, it's like you said in the blog, it was a perfect storm.
Yeah.
You have a really heavily, declining economy. Mm-hmm. Then you got internet revenues moving up through the roof because people are moving money to the internet because it's much more cost effective. And at the same time, readerships, viewerships, and all the other normal media are going down because people are transitioning to what we've been talking about for years, which is convenience. In other words, people want on demand, and on demand trumps lots of different things today. And the less you're on demand, the more you'll decline.
I would just add to that by saying that I think that the millennial generation, which we hear so much about these days as a very influential group of folks, I guess it's anyone under 30, that they do everything digitally, everything. Probably send out 50 texts a day or more, and are always checking on their devices. So I think that there is a belief that, to look to the future, that we have to, as Kurt said, to stay in this business, hopefully, as journalists. Yes, our job is changing, but I don't feel like we're giving up our credibility or really having to make, a lot of compromises on quality. We're just evolving, to use your, kind of analogy of a Darwinian form of journalism. We're just getting better, hopefully.
Well, one thing's for sure is the digital aspects of the newspapers and radio and TV, for the most part, are stagnant. They haven't quite figured out how to make it take off, but they will.
Yeah, they're heading in the right direction.
I was singing at the beginning of the show, video killed the radio star. And that song came out 30 years ago, and guess what? We still got plenty of radio. Radio ain't going away.
Right.
Well, the same thing's going to be happening the same with newspaper. What'll happen is you'll call the herd. We'll end up with one big newspaper pretty much in every town, okay? And that newspaper will make money because they don't have any competition. Think about it.
Corner the market.
Yeah, corner the market.
I don't know about that. Friendly competition, I think, is a good thing, and
but I think that's going to go away for a while.
Scoops and trying to be out there first, and I don't know about that one, but we'll see, right?
Well, we'll see.
So, what are your views on the subject, Kurt?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned video killed the radio star. Radio killed the newspaper a long time ago, if you believe the reports back in the 30s and 40s. So, and yet here I am today, sitting and talking to you. It's a matter of, as y'all have been saying, it's a matter of adapting and finding what your business model is. Our business model is completely different than it was 10 years ago. It has to be. The revenue is different. Our revenue streams, whereas there used to be one big pipe of revenue for the most part coming into the Times Union and virtually every other newspaper, and that was advertising revenue. Advertising revenue fell off year over year over year, by double digits, by 20-30%. And so we had to find a different way to access revenue, and we're finding it in consumer use, in other uses of our delivery model. There are a lot of it's through merchandising other than our information gathering capability. There are a lot of things we have to do now to get money to bring in revenue, because we can't be so one-dimensional, which is part of the adaptation of our business. And it's part, you're right about the perfect storm. It was disruption technologically and the devastating economic conditions.
So, Kurt, did it change the way the reporters are working, or the way the reporting is happening at this time?
Absolutely. I mean, the reporters are much more in touch with what's going on.
I think most are much more independent.
Monopoly, but in taking away our monopoly, it added dimensions to how we were able to accept information. Sure, there are more ways that the public can accept information, and as I love to tell Rotary groups and Kiwanis groups, there's an infinite amount of information on the internet, and some of it's even true. We'll tell you what's true or not. We have that is our mission, and the journalism itself has value for more than just something to go around the ads.
And how about the business world, Colleen?
More aware of that, more proud of that, and more serious about that mission.
On my end, I would say, our audience is obviously business leaders who are wanting to get the information they need to do their jobs and run their companies and advance whatever field that they're in. So they need that information, yesterday. They need it, to be competitive and to remain ahead of the pack and to evolve and be innovative in the marketplace. So I think that, I think that job is not changed at all. And again, it's just, the ways that we're delivering that product. I think that we still have about 8,000 in circulation print readership. And we have, on the flip side, not surprisingly, about 1,400 in digital subscription and email newsletters. So you can see it really has become a bit inverted, but there is still an audience for print who still like to get their news that way, and or get it through digital methods every day.
How interactive do you think the medium can be? Because I noticed that, like, for instance, when I'm going through the print version of it, I don't yet see like QR codes and things like that, where you're actually starting to inject some digital elements onto the print side of the equation. Do you think that's something that's coming down the road, or
we're working towards that? Yeah, we're working towards that.
I would think at least have some digital games, like crossword puzzles and stuff like that.
How could that be digital?
Well, it could be online. You could just play it online.
Okay. Play against other people?
You could play against other people.
Jacksonville.com. They're they're a consistently trafficked part of our website. You can play Sudoku. Is it Sudoku?
Sudoku is another one that people would play all the time. And instead of actually getting the paper and actually writing them out, they just do it on their tablet. Or
I wasn't aware of that. Do
it digitally.
Yeah. What's one thing that's really changed a lot? I remember when I was a kid, that most newspapers, 80% of newspapers were delivered by kids. The paper route guy or girl, whoever it was, okay? Today, 80% are delivered by adults driving cars or vans or whatever. That's how most of the papers are delivered. So.
Well, and I'll break in there and tell you, I mentioned that our distribution system as a revenue generating stream. One reason that kids on bicycles can't deliver at the Times-Union anymore is because we're also delivering, I believe, 8 other titles, including the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Investors Business Daily, USA Today. There is no reason, in the old days there was a carrier for each one of those newspapers driving up and down the street. We were all wasting gasoline. There's no reason for more than one car to drive up and down any other street.
So unless the kid has a Harley, he can't carry all of it.
Or one of them little non-gas guzzling cars. But I thought that was an interesting piece that I found. The other thing I thought was an interesting piece, they talk about the long goodbye, and they talk about Kodak, Sears, and newspapers, and they compare them against each other. And the reality is, Sears is still not gone, Kodak is still not gone, and newspapers aren't gone, but they have this long, low decline, and then in many cases they become something else. Because Kodak actually made the transition to digital cameras 10 years ago. But people don't even think of Kodak as being in the digital industry, and they actually do many other types of things. So that long goodbye is really sort of a long evolve, is the way I look at it. One of the things that was also very interesting is when we looked at the numbers, the big decline that happened in 2009, what was most interesting to me is TV took a big dip, radio took a big, magazines, everything took a big dip. The internet just went right by newspaper at that point in time.
Well, of course, part of it was we were right in the heart of the Great Recession, too.
But also,
didn't help.
TV bounced back. I don't know how the hell they did that, but they bounced back because, again, their numbers are declining, but their revenue went up.
The advertising.
And what they did was they started doing more commercials per hour and charging more. So I figure, it'd be another 4 or 5 years before they take the big slide.
Well, yeah, because you can only do that for so long, and then you start losing your audience.
And we're also starting to see a lot more on-demand video. Because you got Amazon and Google and everybody and their brother coming out with
which is what we're on.
I should have mentioned that too. We have a big emphasis in our newsroom on getting a lot of video. Even if it's just a one-on-one interview, we'll do a few questions and try to keep those answers from the subject down to a minute or two. Or it's an event that we're allowing people to see right then and there if they couldn't make it. So I know my editors are always telling us to, it's just on our own phones. Bring your phone out and be ready to take video and post that. And we usually get a pretty good return on how many people actually watch the video all the way through, which I was surprised by. Not just to see the beginning of it, but want to follow through. If you keep it kind of succinct, and again, that's another sort of interactive way I think
that's
we're
something
catering
that
to.
Our industry has known for quite a while. That people are 5 times as likely to watch a video as to read.
Right.
Sure.
Because it's the same thing with the internet.
Get it quick.
It used to be 5 or 6 years ago, people would spend an average of 5 or 6 minutes on a website, and now you're lucky to get them to stick around for 2 minutes.
Right.
people have the attention span of gnats.
As a matter of fact, the blog we've always been putting the radio show on it for about 2 years, and now we're starting to put the video show. Because video, in our videos, they always have Easter eggs and fun things in them that most of the
Cool.
radio shows don't have. So
I didn't know that.
we call them Easter eggs. They're hidden elements that sort of jump in and out.
Yeah, we don't even know what's going to be on it until Nash finishes producing the show. Last week, would you put down a screaming tree fell over because I said you couldn't see the forest for the
You
trees?
talk about there may be a graphic.
We talked about scratching each other's back, and the
All right,
back
this
scratcher
does
jumps
beg
in.
explanation. Do we go there?
Well, plus we've actually gone the other way around because now after doing all the videos and the audios and things like that, we've actually come up with our book, Working the Web to Win, which we just published on Amazon recently.
Congratulations.
And in fact, you'll be able to find the link for that on the website once Nash finishes producing it.
Yeah.
I'll interject here that
Sure.
y'all are talking about different platforms and different ways of telling stories, whether it's video or audio or text or whatever it is. The point is about offering the value to people. And as I said, the newspaper industry it's not a monopoly anymore. People don't have to get their information from us. We have to give them a good value for what we ask them to pay. It's a value proposition, and if we're worth it, they'll pay it.
Right.
It's the same. It's the same for how we tell them the story. If we're telling if it's a story that needs to be told with video, we need to tell it with video. If it's better as prose, if it's better as an alternative story form, we need to make sure that we're telling them the right stories in the right way.
Yeah.
And if we do that, we're creating the optimal value, and that's what keeps the business vibrant.
That's an excellent statement.
But there's also been a sea change in the way people want their information because we live in a society that's overloaded with information. So one of the things they've started to do within the last 5 years is they want information that they don't have to work or think, and that's why video is so powerful.
Right, and you get certain people that like to read, certain people like to listen,
Right.
certain people that want to watch. Well, today you can actually have a fusion of all of the above.
Right.
We do it all the time with our blog. We'll always include videos and of course, our podcast.
There's always a podcast on there, the video, there's pictures, so it's a multimedia mix, and that's one of the things that electronic newspaper can really do well. And essentially, what I see happening is electronic newspaper will become like electronic TV, because TV is becoming that way. They're like becoming a news service that's delivering paper
customized
stuff. Right.
features. You mean
Right.
when you want to watch it or,
Right.
or
When you
read
want
it.
to,
Well,
Yeah.
like they always say,
If you
give
look at
the customers
revolution
what they
on
want.
the internet in the past couple of years, it's really been image-driven, even more than video-driven.
Right.
And if the multimedia ways that we're telling stories now is to create a place where text and photos and video all live together and tell the story all in one place the best way that it can be told.
And
Speaking about giving the audience what they want, what our audience usually wants about this time is our worldwide weird.
yeah,
So what I'm going to do is cover some of the topics that we brought up. Obviously today is April Fool's Day. So what I did is I went out and I did some search online to find out some really strange April Fool's pranks that have been pulled. In fact, some of the most famous or infamous April Fool's pranks that have been pulled. One of my favorite one was actually one that was done in 1996 where, the food chain Taco Bell, they announced on the media that they had bought the Liberty Bell on it, that they were going to change the name of it to the Taco Liberty Bell. And people were actually up in arms, and they started calling the National Park Service complaining about the fact
People
that
really believe that. Some people really bought into
people
it.
are really buying into this stuff. I mean, this
I know here in Jacksonville that the local radio station WOKV did a April Fool's story that they said the space shuttle was landing at INI over the internet.
That's today.
So everybody was out there.
No, it actually was
flagging it
about
down,
2-3
right?
years ago, but they had the link on their radio show this morning, so I thought that was sort of funny.
One of the ones I think our producer will like, because he owns a couple of dogs, was an announcement that IKEA made in 2011 where they said they were coming out with a high chair for dogs with built-in dog balls. I think we could have sold you a couple of those.
A high chair for
I've
Well,
heard-
dogs.
I've
last
heard of
week,
Stranger
what was it,
Things.
a couple of weeks ago, we actually had, this is again for real, this isn't even an April Fool's joke, where they actually came out with a device that you can put on your dog's collar that translates the dog's barking into English language.
No.
We don't make these
We don't know whether it was the right translation, but it was doing
Oh
that.
boy, what have we come to?
Yeah, while you're doing that, on the blog itself, they'll have links to a lot of different articles, especially if they go to the notes page. And I wanted to make note of some of the articles that I thought were really good. One of them was called Bright Future for newspapers, and that's on the American Journal Review. The Long Goodbyes, which I mentioned earlier. Reflections of a Newsaurus blog, which is a blog just about the decline of the newspaper industry. And it's not all bad stuff in there. News Adventures, the scariest thing about newspapers, and it's not that the business print has declined, but digital is growing. That's the big thing there. And what's new in newspaper decline, and that's on the New York Times. So those articles were all very good. There's about 3 dozen in the Club WQ Dropbox for our Club WQ members who actually dial in and then take care of that kind of stuff. So I know we're near the end of the show. We want to thank our sponsors, MedMaster, which is the first and most comprehensive medical social network where you can get a job, get connected, and really take advantage of the opportunities. And also Tub King, who produces the walk-in tubs, which we think of really as a sort of a spa that you can have in your bathroom, and the most beautiful clawfoot tubs that are used by all the movies, the double slipper tub and the slipper tub. Those things are really beautiful things, and that's why you see them in the movies, and they're pretty much considered the sexiest thing you can get in your bathroom.
Right, and I also want to thank, of course, Colleen and Kurt for joining us today on our broadcast.
You're very welcome. If I could just get in one quick plug just to say to our audience that I'm covering technology among my various other beats, which are finance and healthcare. But technology really has been one of the more interesting beats to really sink my teeth into here. And we're always looking for, speaking of interactive features, we've introduced new ways for developers in town to let us know about some startups and new apps that they're working on. And I feel free for anyone to email me at the JBJ.
And the website is thejbj.com.
Well, we'll have it on the screen. So,
Thanks.
and then, of course, speaking of technology, next week's show we're going to cover, does the internet ranking really matter in today's world? And we're also going to show you some ways in which you can generate results online without having to pander to the search engine. So stay tuned.
Yeah, Kurt, you got to give you the last word.
Hey, just glad to be here. Thanks very much. Visit us at jacksonville.com.
Other than that,
Keep working the web
to win.
Come on.